My wife kicked me out after her son lied that I hit him. 3 weeks later, she asked if I'd learned my lesson. Her son went pale after I handed her divorce papers and security footage showing he'd lied. Hey viewers, before we move on to the video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you want to see more stories like this. And if you have your own story to share, send it to me. My contact info is in the description below. I'd love to feature it in an upcoming video. Thanks. You need to leave. Now. Sarah's voice wasn't loud. It was low, cold, and final. It was the tone you'd use on a salesman at the door, not the man you'd shared a bed with for 5 years. She stood in the doorway of our living room, her body a rigid barrier between me and the hallway that led to our bedroom, to my home. Behind her, peeking from the kitchen with a red, blotchy face and one perfectly dry eye, was Jake, her 14-year-old son, my stepson. In his eyes, just for a flash beneath the performative tears, I saw it, a glimmer of pure, unadulterated triumph. 3 hours earlier, I'd been trying. That's all I ever did with Jake. Try. We were at the mall, the three of us, a painfully constructed tableau of family unity. Sarah had insisted. He needs positive memories with you, Mark. Not just you nagging him about homework and chores. So I was footing the bill for overpriced smoothies, feigning interest in neon-lit stores selling graphic t-shirts with memes I didn't understand. Jake trailed behind us, a storm cloud in a hoodie, surgically attached to his phone. Look, Jake, I'd said, stopping by the electronics store. In the window was the new PlayStation 5, its promotional screen flashing with epic, unrealistic battles. That's the one, right? The one you've been talking about. He grunted, not looking up from his own screen. Yeah. It's pretty pricey, Sarah said, squeezing my arm. Maybe for his birthday, if his grades come up? I saw the opening. A peace offering. Tell you what, bud. You pull that history grade up to a B by the midterm, and we'll talk about making it a birthday achievement combo present. A reward for the effort. Finally, he looked at me. The disdain was so potent, it was almost physical. So it's a bribe. Cool. Real mature. Jake, Sarah chastised, but it was a weak sound, a reflex. She turned to me, a placating smile on her face. He doesn't mean it like that. He's just passionate about his games. I swallowed the familiar frustration. This was the dance. Jake would be rude or dismissive. I'd react, however calmly. Sarah would deflect, framing his behavior as spirited or sensitive, and my reasonable expectation of basic respect as being hard on him. I was always the outsider, the third wheel on their pre-built unit of 2. I'd met Sarah when Jake was 9. His biological father was a ghost, a faded memory who sent inconsistent child support and emptier promises. I thought I was stepping in, building something. I paid the mortgage on the house we'd moved into together, a better school district for Jake. I drove him to soccer practice until he quit. I sat through parent-teacher conferences where teachers used phrases like entitled attitude and avoids accountability. I tried to set rules, screen time limits, charts. Sarah would uphold them for a day, then relent when he'd sulk. He's had a hard time, she'd whisper to me in bed. He needs to feel secure. I wanted him to feel secure. I just also wanted him to not be a jerk. Back at the house, the tension from the mall outing had settled like a fog. I was in the kitchen, cleaning up from the dinner Jake had barely touched. He appeared in the doorway. I need the new PlayStation. Not for my birthday. Now. I put down the sponge. Jake, we talked about this. The deal was for the grade improvement. That's stupid. Mom said you could just get it. She said you make enough. A little knife of betrayal twisted. Had she said that? Undermining me, again, to be the cool parent? It's not just about the money. It's about follow-through. You don't follow through on your commitments, chores, homework. Why should I follow through on a major gift with no strings attached? His face darkened. You're not my real dad. You can't tell me what to do. It was an old weapon, well used and dulled from overuse, but it still found its mark. I'm the dad who's here, I said, my voice tight. And in this house, we earn things. The answer is no. He glared at me, a hatred in his eyes that seemed far too ancient for a 14-year-old. You'll be sorry, he hissed, low enough that Sarah, watching TV in the living room, wouldn't hear. I dismissed it as teenage melodrama. Go finish your homework, Jake. He stormed upstairs. I heard his door slam. I finished the dishes, my hands shaking slightly with frustrated adrenaline. About 20 minutes later, A thunderous crash echoed through the house. It came from the upstairs hallway, the sound of a body hitting a wall, followed by the clatter of something framed falling. Sarah's show went silent. Footsteps pounded up the stairs. My feet were moving before my brain processed it. I took the stairs two at a time. Sarah was crouched in the hallway outside Jake's room. Jake was on the floor, his back against the wall, cradling his left arm. A small framed picture of the beach lay shattered on the floor beside him. He was sobbing, great, heaving, convincing sobs. What happened? Sarah's voice was shrill with panic. Jake looked up, his eyes swimming with tears, and pointed a trembling finger directly at me, standing frozen at the top of the stairs. He shoved me. I said he wasn't my dad and he just lost it. He grabbed me and threw me into the wall. The world narrowed to a silent, screaming tunnel. I saw Sarah's face transform from concern to a pale, furious mask. I saw Jake bury his face in his knees, his shoulders shaking, though I could now see, with a surreal clarity, that the arm he was supposedly cradling was the wrong one. He was holding his right arm, but wincing as if his left was hurt. "Sarah," I said, my voice strangely calm in the ringing silence. "I was downstairs. I just got here. I didn't touch him." She didn't even look at me. She was stroking Jake's hair, her back rigid. "Are you hurt, baby? Can you move it?" "It really hurts, Mom," Jake whimpered. "Sarah." I tried again, taking a step forward. "Look at me. I would never." "He's lying. Ask him what really happened. He probably threw himself into the wall." That's when she turned. Her eyes were like flint. "My son," she said, each word a chip of ice, "does not lie about something like this." "Everyone lies about something, Sarah? Especially a kid who just got told no. Use your head." It was the wrong thing to say. It confirmed her narrative, the angry, aggressive stepfather. "I knew it," she whispered, the whisper more terrifying than a scream. "I knew you resented him. All your little rules, your constant criticism. I made excuses for you. I thought you were just trying to be a father. But you hate him." "That is not true. I have spent 5 years trying to be there for him. For both of you." The injustice of it was a physical burn in my chest. "And this is how you show it," she spat, rising to her feet. She positioned herself squarely between me and Jake. A protector. From me. By laying hands on him. Over a game. I didn't touch him. I was pleading now, the dignity starting to crack under the sheer, staggering weight of the falsehood. "I don't want to hear it," she said, her voice dropping back into that terrifying, final calm. "Get out. You're choosing not to even hear me? Not to even ask for my side. You're just taking the word of a pissed-off kid over your husband." "There's nothing to hear," she said, her gaze flat and dismissive. "Pack a bag. Leave the keys. We'll talk about you getting your things later." She turned her back on me, kneeling again to fuss over Jake. The conversation was over. I had been tried and convicted in less than 60 seconds. I stood there for a long moment, watching them. The betrayed wife and the victimized son. A perfect, pathetic picture. Jake peeked out from under his mother's arm. He saw me looking, and he didn't smile. He didn't sneer. He just looked at me with a blank, cold emptiness. Then he buried his face again, his sobs renewing with gusto. That blankness did it. It extinguished the last flicker of my hope, my fight. "Okay," I said. The word hung in the air, simple and utterly deflating to her dramatic stand. She'd expected yelling, begging, justification. She got one quiet syllable of acceptance. I walked past them, down the hall to the bedroom we shared. I took the duffel bag from the top of the closet. I didn't rage pack. I moved methodically. Underwear, socks, a few pairs of pants, some t-shirts and sweaters. Toiletries from the bathroom. My laptop and its charger from the desk. I left the wedding photo on the nightstand. I left the watch she'd bought me for our anniversary on the dresser. 5 years of life, condensed into one black nylon bag. I walked back down the hallway. They were still there, a frozen tableau. Sarah was watching me now, a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. Maybe she'd expected a different script. I stopped at the front door, my keys in my hand. I looked at her one last time. "You should put some ice on that," I said, nodding toward Jake's arm. My voice was utterly neutral. A clinical observation. Then I placed my house key on the small entryway table. I opened the door, stepped through into the cool evening air, and closed it softly behind me. The click of the latch was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. I sat in my car in the driveway for a full 10 minutes, not crying, not pounding the steering wheel, just breathing. The house looked the same. Warm light glowed from the living room window. My home, our home, from which I had just been permanently exiled based on a child's lie and a woman's refusal to see me. I started the car and drove. I didn't know where to go. I ended up at a generic, budget hotel off the interstate. The room smelled of stale cigarettes and industrial cleaner. I dropped my bag on the floor, sat on the edge of the stiff bed, and stared at the beige wall. The unfairness of it wasn't a wave. It was a slow, rising tide, cold and suffocating. It wasn't just about the lie. It was about her instantaneous, wholesale belief in it. It meant that in some deep, unacknowledged part of her, she'd already believed I was capable of it. I had been on probation in my own marriage, and I never knew. The love I'd given, the stability I'd provided, the patience I'd practiced, it was all conditional. It could be voided by the tearful accusation of a resentful teenager. In the profound quiet of that ugly room, a switch flipped. The hurt didn't vanish, but it was compartmentalized, put in a locked box. In its place came a cold, clear clarity. This was over. I lay back on the scratchy bedspread, staring at the water-stained ceiling tile. The first, unbidden thought wasn't of loss, but of a mundane detail. The small, discreet security camera I'd installed under the eaves by the front door last year after a spate of package thefts. It was motion-activated. It recorded video and audio to a cloud server. It was pointed at the front walk, but its microphone was sensitive. The living room window was right there. The hallway where Jake had staged his accident was just inside, not visible to the camera's eye, but sound carried. I didn't move to check it. Not yet. Let the night settle. Let the new, terrible truth of my life solidify. I closed my eyes. The last thing I saw was Jake's face in that hallway. Not the crying mask, but the blank, cold stare that came after. He thought he'd won. He had no idea what he'd just started. The hotel room was a tomb of beige and stale air. I didn't cry. I didn't break anything. The shock was too profound, too absolute, to leave room for anything but a hollow, ringing silence. I just sat there, on the edge of the bed, and let the reality pour into me like cold cement. It wasn't the lie that was killing me. It was the prelude. The 5 years of walking on eggshells, of every disagreement with Jake becoming a referendum on my commitment. The way Sarah would say my son when she was defending him, and our family, only when she needed something from me. The financial ledger I'd kept in my head, not out of resentment, but out of a desperate hope that if I contributed enough, the mortgage, the vacations, the college fund I'd started, I would finally earn the title of father. Not just mom's husband. I had been a tenant in my own life. A useful, paying tenant who provided stability, but a tenant nonetheless. And tenants can be evicted without cause. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from Sarah. Sarah, 9:47 p.m. I hope you're getting the help you need. What you did is unacceptable. Jake is terrified. I stared at the words. What you did. Not what allegedly happened. Not we need to talk this through. A verdict, delivered via text. I didn't reply. What was there to say? I didn't do it. She'd already chosen not to believe that. Any protest would be filtered through her new, terrifying lens of me as a violent threat. A second text followed an hour later. Sarah, 10:53 p.m. We'll be changing the locks tomorrow for our safety. You can arrange with me to collect the rest of your things when I'm home. I'll need to supervise. Our safety. Supervise. The language was deliberate, legalistic, painting me as a dangerous intruder. This was the woman who'd fallen asleep on my chest a week ago. Now, she was building a case. My heart, which had been numb, gave a single, hard throb of pure agony. Then it went still again. I powered off my phone. The silence returned, deeper now. The next morning, sunlight sliced through the gaps in the cheap curtains, revealing the dusty motel room in all its pathetic glory. The grief was still there, a lead weight in my gut, but on top of it now was something else. A sharp, clear focus. An operating manual for the dismantling of a life. I powered on my phone. It buzzed with a few more texts, variations on her theme from last night, escalating slightly in their self-righteousness. I ignored them. I opened my contacts and scrolled past Sarah, home, to a name I'd never thought I'd need. David Chun, ESQ, a college friend who'd gone into family law. We played golf twice a year. Last time, he joked, "Hope you never need my real services, buddy." I called him. It went to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. This wasn't a voicemail conversation. I got dressed. I went to a diner down the road and ate a tasteless breakfast, forcing the food down. I needed fuel, not comfort. At 9:01 a.m., my phone rang. "David." "Mark? Everything okay?" He sounded concerned. I never called on a weekday morning. "No, David. It's not." My voice was steady, which surprised me. I laid it out for him, clinical and concise. The accusation, the immediate eviction, the texts about locks and supervision. I didn't embellish. I didn't vent. I stated facts. He listened in professional silence. When I finished, he let out a long, low whistle. "Okay. First, do not, under any circumstances, go to the house without someone present. Preferably me or a police escort if she's alleging violence. She's creating a paper trail. You need to do the same. Understood. Second, any evidence? Texts, emails, witnesses." I almost laughed. The only witness is her son, who's the accuser. And her, who believes him. What about the house itself? You said he claimed you shoved him into a wall. Any damage? Anything inconsistent with his story? The wall. The framed picture. The camera. "I installed a security camera last year," I said, the words feeling strange in my mouth. "Front door? It has audio." David's tone shifted instantly, from cautious to keenly interested. "Does it cover where this happened?" "No. It's outside. But the living room window was open. The hallway is right inside. You might hear everything." "Mark," David said, his voice deliberate. "Listen to me. Do not tell her about the camera. Do not mention it. Access the footage. Save it in at least 3 separate places: cloud, external drive, your laptop. Then call me back. Do it now." I drove to a library, found a quiet corner corral, and opened my laptop. My hands were perfectly steady. This was a technical task, a problem to be solved. I logged into the secure cloud service for the home security system. The interface was simple, a timeline of motion-activated recordings. I scrolled back to yesterday evening. There it was, a 4-minute file triggered at 7:14 p.m., right around the time of the incident. I put in my earbuds and clicked play. The video showed the empty front walk, the porch light casting long shadows. The audio was crisp. At first, just ambient neighborhood sounds. Then, the distant, muffled sound of the TV from inside, Sarah's show. A car passed. Then, clear as a bell, my own voice, raised but not yelling, filtered through the open window. "In this house, we earn things." The answer is no. A pause. Then Jake's voice, venomous and close. "You'll be sorry." A door slam. The mundane sounds of the house for a few minutes. The TV. A distant clatter of dishes, me in the kitchen. Then, the crash. It was loud, even through the microphone. The violent thud of impact, the brittle shatter of glass. It made me flinch. Sarah's voice, shrill and distant. "What happened?" Footsteps running. Then Jake's voice. But it was different now. It was a perfect performance of pain and fear, but listening with detached focus, I heard the actor beneath it. The slight, calculated catch in the breath. He shoved me. I said he wasn't my dad and he just lost it. He grabbed me and threw me into the wall. My own voice, pleading. "Sarah, I was downstairs. I just got here. I didn't touch him." The following argument played out exactly as I remembered, but hearing it from this disembodied perspective was surreal. Sarah's cold certainty. My escalating desperation. Her final, damning edict, "Get out." Then, the sounds of me moving around, packing. A long silence after the front door clicked shut. And then, the clearest sound of all. Sarah's voice, softer now, soothing. "It's okay, baby. He's gone. You're safe." And Jake's voice. All tears gone, replaced by a flat, petulant tone. "My arm doesn't even hurt that bad. Can I still get the PlayStation?" A beat of silence from Sarah. Then, not anger, not horror, but a tired, almost amused sigh. "We'll see, honey. Let's just get through this first." I stopped the recording. I sat very still in the library corral. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. A student coughed a few rows away. The world was normal. And on my screen was the digital proof that my marriage had been a fragile illusion, shattered not by a shove, but by a sigh of weary compliance. There was no rage. There was no vindication. There was only a vast, endless sadness, and beneath it, the bedrock of that new, cold clarity. I did as David said. I downloaded the file. I saved it to my laptop's hard drive, to a USB key I bought at the pharmacy, and to a new, private cloud folder. I labeled it meticulously, audio_evidence_7-14.raw. Then I called David back. I have it, I said. The audio. It's all there. His threat, the crash, the false accusation, her reaction. And a conversation after I left where he admits it doesn't hurt and asks for the game console. David was quiet for a moment. Mark, that's a silver bullet. That's beyond a silver bullet. That's the whole arsenal. Do you want me to listen? No, I said. I trust your judgment. What's next? What do you want? He asked, his lawyer voice dropping for a moment, replaced by my friend's concern. I looked out the library window at the ordinary street. I want out. Completely, cleanly, and as quickly as possible. I don't want the house. I want my equity. I want my personal belongings. I want no future contact. Then we file for divorce. Irreconcilable differences. We don't lead with the audio. We let her believe her narrative is still the operating one. It gives us the strategic advantage. She's changing the locks today, I said. Noted. We'll add unlawful eviction to the filing. It strengthens your position for asset division. I'll have the papers drawn up. We'll file them, but we won't serve her immediately. Why not? A small, hard smile was audible in his voice. Because people who believe they're in the right, and who believe you are defeated, often reveal their true hand. They get arrogant. They tip their cards. Let her sit in her certainty for a little while. Let her commit to her story. When the audio comes out, it won't just disprove her, it will expose the entire charade. It will show the court, and any mutual friends, her fundamental bad faith. It was cold. It was calculated. It was exactly what I needed. Do it, I said. The next 3 weeks were a lesson in suspended animation. I rented a small, furnished apartment. It was blank and impersonal, and I liked it that way. Nothing here could betray me. I went to work. I performed my duties. I was, by all accounts, fine. David filed the divorce petition. It was a simple, clean document stating the marriage was irretrievably broken. It listed my claim for 50% of the marital equity in the home, based on my payment of the mortgage, and a list of personal property to be retrieved. It made no mention of Jake's accusation. It was a business document, dissolving a partnership. I heard snippets about Sarah's life through the muted grapevine of a single mutual friend, Lisa, who was confused and trying to stay out of it. Texts would trickle in. She says it's been so peaceful, but Jake's being a handful. She's complaining about the mortgage payment. Didn't realize how much you covered. I never replied to these probes. Lisa's loyalty was to drama, not to me. Sarah's texts to me had evolved. The accusatory ones stopped after a week of my silence. They were replaced by a different tone. Sarah, week 2, this is so hard on Jake. He's having nightmares. Sarah, week 2. 2 days later, we need to talk about moving forward. This can't go on forever. Sarah, week 3, I'm willing to consider family counseling. For Jake's sake. Each one was a fishing expedition, testing the waters to see if I was broken, if I was ready to cave, to apologize to make it all go away. She was managing the aftermath of her decision and finding it less rewarding than she'd imagined. The texts weren't about me. They were about her increasing burden. I deleted them all, unread, after the first line preview. My only project, my only focus, was the new, quiet rhythm of my own life. I bought groceries for one. I watched whatever I wanted on TV. The silence, which had been oppressive in the hotel, began to feel like peace. I realized how much energy I had spent navigating the minefield of their dynamics, absorbing Sarah's dismissals, absorbing Jake's resentment. That energy was now my own. David called. The papers are ready. She hasn't been served yet. She's going to get a notification from the court that a petition has been filed, but she won't get the physical papers until a process server delivers them. That's your moment of maximum leverage. What's your play? I knew exactly what it was. I had replayed that last conversation in the hallway 1,000 times. Her cold certainty, her refusal to look at me, her promise that we'd talk about you getting your things later. It was later. She told me to arrange a time to get my things when she could supervise. I said, my voice devoid of any emotion. I think I'll take her up on that. David understood immediately. You're going to hand her the papers yourself. You want the confrontation. No. I corrected him. and I meant it. I don't want a confrontation. I want an execution, and I want him to watch. There was a long pause on the line. The audio file is in the evidence package for discovery. It doesn't have to be a spectacle, Mark. We can just serve her and be done. She evicted me from my home based on a lie, I said, the first hint of heat entering my voice, instantly cooled. She told our friends I was violent. She is living in a house I pay for, believing she holds all the moral and legal power. I want her to see, in person, the precise moment that power evaporates. Then I will be done. David, to his credit, didn't argue. Okay, but you say nothing until she's got the papers in her hand. Let her make the first move. Record the interaction on your phone in your pocket. For your protection, I will. The night before I was to go, I took the manila envelope from David's office from my briefcase. Inside were the divorce papers. On the last page, beneath the line for her signature, I had printed a simple note. For relevant evidence, see attached link and password. Below it, I wrote the URL to the private cloud folder and the password. The date of my eviction, formatted as she'd said it. Get out now. I placed the envelope on my new, empty kitchen counter. Next to it, I laid out the clothes I would wear. Not the jeans and hoodies of my old at-home life, but crisp chinos and a simple, well-made sweater. The clothes of a man who was not coming home, but closing an account. As I lay in bed in the dark of my silent apartment, I didn't think of Sarah's face. I thought of Jake's, the blank, cold stare he'd given me after the performance. He'd believed he was punishing me for saying no. He had no concept of the chain reaction he'd triggered, the avalanche of consequences that was now, quietly, poised to fall directly onto him and the mother who had enabled him. 3 weeks of silence. 3 weeks of her believing she was teaching me a lesson. Tomorrow, the lesson would end, and the learning would begin. The text came at 4:37 p.m. on a Tuesday, exactly 3 weeks and 1 day after my eviction. Sarah, we need to talk. Come by the house tomorrow at 6. No question mark. No please. It was a summons, issued from the throne of her presumed righteousness. I looked at the message, a faint, cold smile touching my lips. She'd held out as long as she could. The mortgage payment must have been a shock. The reality of solo parenting a teenage tyrant must have been sinking in. Now, she was ready to dictate the terms of my surrender. I didn't reply. Silence had been my language for 3 weeks, and I saw no reason to break it now. Let her wonder. Let her assume my compliance. The following evening, I dressed carefully in the clothes I'd laid out. Charcoal chinos, a navy cashmere sweater, boots that were polished but not aggressive. I looked put together, successful, and utterly detached. I picked up the manila envelope from my counter. It felt light in my hand, a feather holding the weight of a 5-year illusion. I arrived at 5:58 p.m. Our house. The porch light was on. The lawn was slightly overgrown. A single, limp bag of garbage sat by the curb, overdue for collection. Small details of decay. I didn't ring the bell. I didn't use my key. It was useless now. I stood on the front step and waited. At 6:02, the door opened. Sarah stood there, arms crossed over her chest. She was dressed in yoga pants and an old sweatshirt of mine she'd claimed for lazy days. Her hair was in a messy bun. She looked tired, but her expression was pure, cultivated steel. "You're late," she said, not moving from the doorway. "I'm here," I replied, my voice neutral. "You wanted to talk." She looked me up and down, a flicker of confusion in her eyes. I didn't look like a broken man begging for scraps. I looked like a guest, and an unimpressed one at that. It threw her script. "Come in," she said finally, stepping back with obvious reluctance. The house smelled different. Less like clean linen and the meals I used to cook, more like microwave popcorn and a vague, unwashed staleness. The living room was messy, with Jake's things strewn about. She didn't invite me to sit. We stood in the space between the couch and the TV, where we'd once curled up to watch movies. Jake lurked in the kitchen doorway, a silent spectator. He was paler than I remembered, his eyes watchful. The triumphant glint was gone, replaced by a nervous, sullen energy. Sarah took a deep breath, summoning her rehearsed magnanimity. "I hope these weeks have given you time to think," she began, her tone that of a headmistress addressing a wayward student. "To think about your anger, and what it almost cost you." I said nothing. I just watched her. "Jake has been through a lot," she continued, gaining confidence from my silence. The trauma, the fear. But he's a resilient boy, and a forgiving one. I glanced at Jake. He looked at the floor, shifting his weight. What do you want, Sarah? I asked, cutting through the performance. She blinked, startled by the directness. I want to know if you've learned your lesson. The words were astonishing in their arrogance. If you're ready to take full accountability, to apologize to Jake, sincerely, and to commit to intensive family therapy. She emphasized, gesturing vaguely between herself and the lurking Jake, might be able to move past this. To rebuild trust. She paused, letting the grand offer hang in the air. It was a readmission exam to an institution I now saw was a prison. The price of entry was a confession to a crime I didn't commit. That's what you want? I asked, my voice still calm, almost curious. An apology. And therapy. It's the only path forward, Mark, she said, a note of impatience creeping in. You have to own what you did. Completely. Then, and only then, can we even begin to discuss you coming back home. She truly believed it. She believed I had been sitting in a motel for 3 weeks, shattered by guilt, just waiting for this chance to prostrate myself. She believed her forgiveness was the most valuable currency in the world. I nodded slowly, as if considering. Then, I held up the manila envelope. I brought you something. Her eyes went to it, wary. What is that? More excuses? A letter, in a manner of speaking. I extended it toward her. You should open it. Hesitantly, she took the envelope. She tore open the flap and pulled out the stack of papers. Her eyes scanned the top page. I saw the words register, petition for dissolution of marriage. The color drained from her face in a slow, creeping wave. What is this? She whispered, her voice suddenly thin. It's what you said we'd talk about later, I said. You said we'd talk about me getting my things. This handles that. And everything else. She was flipping through the pages now, her hands beginning to tremble. You can't do this. After what you did, you're filing for divorce. Irreconcilable differences, I said, as if explaining a minor technicality. No. The word was a sharp crack, her composure shattering. No, you don't get to do this. You don't get to play the victim here. You're the one who… She stopped herself, glancing frantically at Jake, who had taken a step forward, his eyes wide with dawning horror. Who what, Sarah? I asked, my voice quiet. Who hurt your son? She stared at me, her mouth opening and closing. The script was gone. This wasn't in the playbook. You're sick, she hissed. You're trying to punish us for holding you accountable. Turn to the last page. I instructed, my tone flat. Confused, furious, she did. She saw my note. The link. The password. What is this? She demanded. It's the relevant evidence, I said. The audio from the security camera. The one under the eaves by the front door. You remember, I installed it after the porch pirate took your skincare order. Her face went from pale to ashen. Her eyes shot to the window, then back to me, filled with a new, primal fear. Jake made a small, choked sound in the kitchen doorway. It has a very sensitive microphone. I continued, the clinical explanation somehow more terrifying than any shout. It picked up the whole thing. The argument. The crash. The accusation. My denial. Your decision. I paused, letting the imagery sink in. And the conversation you had with Jake after I left the house. It's all there. The link is private. The password is the date. The day you told me to get out. Sarah's phone clattered to the floor from her numb fingers. She wasn't looking at the papers anymore. She was staring through me, into the abyss of her own catastrophic error. Jake found his voice, a panicked, adolescent whine. Mom, he's lying. He's bluffing. But Sarah wasn't listening to him. She was looking at me, and for the first time, she was truly seeing me. Not the angry stepfather of her narrative, but the man she had betrayed with such casual, absolute certainty. The man who was now an adversary, armed with truth. You recorded us, she breathed, the accusation morphing into a weapon she tried to turn back on me. I recorded my property, I corrected. For security. It seems it served its purpose. The dam broke. Sarah's righteous anger collapsed into a frantic, scrambling desperation. The performance was over. The audience, me, was no longer buying tickets. Mark, please, she gasped, taking a step toward me, her hands coming up in a pleading gesture. The divorce papers fluttered to the floor. You have to understand, he's just a boy. He was scared. He didn't know what he was doing. I didn't move. I watched her crumble. He knew exactly what he was doing, I said, my gaze shifting to Jake. He looked like he might be sick. He knew you'd believe him. And he was right. We can fix this, she cried, tears now streaming down her face. But they were tears of panic, not remorse. We can go to therapy. We can tell them it was a misunderstanding. A mistake. You told everyone I was violent. I stated, a simple fact. You changed the locks. You supervised my exit like I was a criminal. Those weren't mistakes, Sarah. Those were choices. This, I said, nodding to the papers on the floor, is a consequence. Her desperation curdled into something uglier. The fear in her eyes sparked into fury. You're going to ruin us? Over a childish lie? You're going to take your money and run and leave us with nothing. I'm claiming my equity in the marital home, I said, my voice never rising. The home I've paid the mortgage on for 5 years. The rest is outlined in the petition. My lawyer has the original audio file. A forensic analyst has confirmed its authenticity. It will be entered as evidence. It tends to disprove your claims of domestic violence, which, I'm advised, could have impacted the divorce settlement significantly. Consider this the cleanest possible outcome for you. Every clinical, legal term was a nail in the coffin of our shared life. I was speaking a language she couldn't manipulate, from a position she could no longer touch. She stared at me, her chest heaving. Then her eyes, wild and bloodshot, swiveled to Jake. The love and protection vanished, scorched away by the heat of her own impending ruin. You, she shrieked, the sound raw and ragged. She took a stumbling step toward him. You stupid, lying little brat. Look what you've done. Do you have any idea what you've cost us? Jake flinched as if struck, cowering back against the kitchen counter. Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't think. You didn't think. You've ruined everything. For a game. The transformation was complete. The united front was obliterated. The victim and his protector were now the accuser and the accused. It was a vicious, ugly explosion, and I was merely a spectator to the collapse of the world they'd built on a lie. I had seen enough. I bent down and picked up the fallen divorce papers. I straightened the stack and placed them neatly on the arm of the couch, where she couldn't miss them. You'll be formally served by a process server in the next few days, I said, my voice cutting through their chaos. My things will be collected by a moving company this Friday at 10 a.m. They will have a key from the rental agent. Do not be here. Sarah whirled back to me, her face a mask of tear-streaked rage and terror. You can't just walk out on your family. We need you. The hypocrisy was so breathtaking it was almost beautiful. You ended this family 3 weeks ago, Sarah, I said, and for the first time, a sliver of final, weary emotion colored my words. Not anger, not hurt, just a profound, irrevocable truth. You just didn't bother to tell me until now. I turned and walked to the front door. The sound of her sobbing, no longer performative, but deep, guttural, and real, and Jake's panicked, pleading whispers followed me. Mark, please, she screamed from the living room. I didn't turn back. I opened the door and stepped out into the cool evening. I pulled it shut behind me, the solid thud a perfect bookend to the click of the latch 3 weeks prior. This time, I didn't sit in the car. I started the engine immediately. As I reversed out of the driveway, my headlights swept across the living room window. For a split second, I saw the frozen silhouette of them inside. Sarah, her hands clawing at her hair, and Jake, small and hunched against the kitchen doorway. Then I turned the wheel and drove away. The movers came on Friday. They reported a silent, tense house. Sarah was there, red-eyed, watching from the kitchen. Jake was not. They packed my books, my tools, my clothes, the few pieces of furniture that were mine before the marriage. They loaded it all into storage. I would sort it later, donate most of it. The artifacts of that life held no power over me anymore. The divorce proceedings were, as David predicted, straightforward once the audio evidence was disclosed to her lawyer. Her claims evaporated. The settlement was swift. I received a cash buyout of my share of the home's equity. She had to refinance to keep it. I heard through the withered grapevine that it was a struggle, that she'd had to take on a roommate, a co-worker she didn't like. Mutual friends, once divided, slowly learned snippets of the truth. Not from me. I never spoke of it. But stories have a way of leaking. Lisa, the drama lover, eventually sent a long, rambling text about how we all make mistakes, and Sarah is really suffering. I didn't respond. She wasn't seeking truth. She was seeking to recenter herself in the narrative. I had no use for any of them. About 6 months after that night at the house, I was at a hardware store, buying supplies for a shelving unit in my new, permanent apartment. I turned a corner into the paint aisle, and there they were. Sarah and Jake. She looked 10 years older. She was holding 2 paint samples, arguing with him in a low, exhausted hiss. He was taller, lankier, slouching against a cart with his headphones on, ignoring her. Their dynamic was etched in acid, mutual resentment, a bond now corroded by shared culpability. They saw me at the same moment. Sarah froze, the paint cards falling from her hand. Her eyes were wide, a tumult of shame, anger, and a pathetic, lingering hope flashing across her face. Jake yanked his headphones down, his adolescent bravado melting into pure, unadulterated fear. He looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him. I held their gaze for no more than 2 seconds. I didn't nod. I didn't smile. I didn't frown. I simply looked through them, as if they were store fixtures, present, but of no more personal significance than a can of primer or a drop cloth. Then I turned my cart and moved down the aisle toward the fasteners, my focus already returned to the task at hand, building a shelf for my new life. That was the last time I saw them. The divorce was finalized not long after. A piece of paper arrived in the mail. I filed it away and felt nothing. Sometimes, in the deep quiet of my own space, I think about the chain of events, not with bitterness, but with a strange, detached curiosity. A single, petty lie from a resentful child, empowered by a mother's willful blindness, triggered the total collapse of a world. It was like watching a single corrupted line of code crash an entire system. I didn't get a new girlfriend right away. I didn't need to. I traveled to places I'd always wanted to see, on my own schedule. I took a woodworking class. I read books in uninterrupted silence. The energy I had once spent navigating landmines was now spent building a life that was, brick by quiet brick, entirely my own. The betrayal was a fire. It burned everything I had known to the ground. But I walked out of those ashes not seeking revenge, not even seeking justice. I walked out seeking peace. And in the profound, unbroken silence I cultivated for myself, I found it. She thought she was teaching me a lesson about anger. In the end, she taught me the invaluable lesson of my own worth. She and Jake, in their toxic, codependent alliance, had given me the one thing they'd always withheld, my freedom. And for that, I suppose, in the coldest, most detached way possible, I am grateful. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. What do you think about this story? Share it in the comments.